Hey guys, what's going on? DJ Demand here, back here with another video. And today's video is going to be my spoiler review of The Last of Us Part 2. Now, I do have a spoiler-free review up on my channel, so go check that out if you want the spoiler-free version. But here we're going to be talking about all the different types of spoilers. So please, if you don't want to be spoiled, leave now. Otherwise, let's go ahead and jump right into it. So, like I mentioned in my spoiler-free review, I was able to avoid spoilers for the most part. You know, I went into the game pretty blind. It's just that funny story. As soon as I popped the game into my PlayStation and had it downloading, I was just playing on my phone, and I was on YouTube, and I saw someone say that, you know, Blank's reaction to Joel's death. And I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I'm downloading the game now. I was able to avoid all these spoilers, and now's the time that now's the time I run into a spoiler. But the thing is that that's all it said. I had no clue who, the when, the why. So again, I still went into the game pretty blind. So the first thing I want to talk about in this video are the spoilers that came out around, I believe around a month and a half before the game came out. Because again, I avoided those spoilers. But now that I've beaten the game, I wanted to go back and see what those spoilers were, how true were they, and and see if they were how much context did those spoilers give? Were they pretty vague, or did they go into really explicit detail? And so I went back to see what those spoilers were, to see what people were so upset about, and why so many people are like, oh man, this game just saved me $60. This game's going to be trash, this, that, and the third. I was just so curious. So I went back, and the main spoiler, there were a few different spoilers here and there, but the main one that people were upset about was that the fact that Joel dies, and the way that he dies is that he's killed by Abby via golf club, and that you end up actually playing as that character Abby, and then on top of that, that this character goes after Ellie. Yes, so hearing all of that out of context, I can definitely understand why a lot of people would be upset or think that this story sounds so ridiculous, or that sounds super fan fiction-y, and all of the above. I can definitely understand that out of context, because it's like, yo, you're gonna kill off one of the main characters that we grew to love through the first game, and then you're gonna make me play as that person, and then you're gonna make me go after the other beloved character in the game. That I can understand why people were upset. And I believe also in the leaks it stated that the reason why Abby kills Joel is because Joel kills her father. Now, I can't remember if the leaks reveal whether or not who her father was, but anyway, so I can definitely understand someone who just sees those spoilers or those leaks out of context and then comes up with their own like preconceived notions or thoughts about the game and how it's going to play out, and think it's going to be trash and this, that, and the third. But the way that I kind of see the leaks is that the leaks are kind of like when you hear one person's side of the story, and you're like, and that person, and what that person is saying is true, but they're leaving out certain details. And so you're like, okay, I'm with that person, but then you hear the other person's side of the story, being the full retail release of the game. And then when you hear the other person's side of the story, you get the full context of the situation, and then you're more on the person that gives the full context side of the story. And that's kind of how I feel about the full release of the game. So let me go ahead and give an example of one of the leaks being kind of sort of out of context. So one of the leaks states that you play as Abby, or what exactly does it say? Let me look where it says. One of the leaks states that the game has you fight Ellie from the perspective of Abby. Now, yes, that is true, but if it was a person that doesn't have the full context, you would probably believe that you spend a good chunk of the game going after Ellie. That's not true at all. Like maybe 95% of the time, Abby has no clue what's going on with Ellie whatsoever, because Ellie's on her own path with dealing with her revenge, while Abby's doing her own thing, and eventually those paths do meet. But for the most part, Abby's doing her own thing. That's what I kind of mean by the leaks being kind of sort of out of context, and me also understanding why someone would come up with their own theories about what's going on just based off the leaks. But even with that said, I can understand why someone would still absolutely hate this game and the story that it decides to take, even if they have full context, even if a person sits down, plays the game all the way through, I can still understand why they would end up hating this game for, of course, multiple reasons. Again, number one, they end up killing off Joel, and again, they make you play as Abby, the character that kills Joel, and some people just can't get over that hump that they make you play as a character that kills Joel, or they just even can't get over the hump that they killed Joel off in the first place. I'm one of the people that can, but again, I can understand why someone wouldn't, because again, this is a character that you're attached to, that you came to love, and then end up killing them off in the fashion that they did. Another big reason why I can understand why people don't like this game is because it just doesn't, the story just isn't what people wanted after waiting 7 years for a sequel to what some consider one of the greatest games of all time, or one of the greatest games of the last generation. They didn't want, a cycle of violent story. Well, this person did this bad thing, so I'm going to come after you. Now I'm coming back after you. People didn't want that. And, I personally, I like the story the way it was. It's probably be mainly one of the main reasons probably being because I didn't really have any type of theories or expectations for the game of where the story was going to go. I was just curious of what they were going to do with the story just in general. But some people may have just wanted this to continue on the path of I don't know, seeing this apocalyptic world, or maybe some other faction is dealing something with another cure related thing, or something that's not this cycle of violent story. But again, you guys, I actually like the way the story plays out. I like the idea of what Joel did catching back up to him, maybe not in the way that it played out, but I like the idea of something happening. He can't just get off scot-free with what he did, just living with the guilt of it. I don't think so, because again, he basically could have possibly doomed the world. I mean, we're not 100% sure whether or not the cure would have worked, but with what he did, they seem pretty sure that they could. So him doing that, he could have possibly doomed the world, or at least the foreseeable future of that world. So again, I like the idea of that kind of catching back up to him. And even Ellie's upset with him because she wanted her life to matter, because right now she feels like it doesn't. And she felt like, giving her life for a cure, that's what, she would have done. But, Joel took that away from her. So of course she's going to be upset with him. Now, I saw Jeremy John's spoiler review of the game, and he talked about how, that Joel did the right thing because, they probably would have militarized the fact that they had a cure and just kind of hold it over everybody, and maybe, make immune soldiers and just kind of use that to kind of take over. And I can see where Jeremy was coming from, but in my eyes, I'd rather live in a world that has a cure rather than one that's not. Or am I the only one? I don't know. Going back to what I liked about the story, I liked the story structure of how in the beginning we play as Ellie up to a certain point, and then we play as Abby, seeing her perspective up to that same point, and then those 2 points kind of colliding, and then again seeing that aftermath of what happens. And I just found that playing through Abby's story to be more interesting, because Ellie, she's just on a revenge quest, while Abby, we get to see the different faction between the wolves and the scars, and then we're also getting to see her friends and her relationship with her friends, and we kind of get to see that these don't really seem like bad people. They're just good people that do bad things, and that's kind of one of the things I like about the game itself, because even on Ellie's side, I don't really see them as bad people per se. They're just bad people, or good people doing bad things. This is kind of just the game's way of showing you there's not really a bad guy per se when it comes to the story, or at least when it comes to Ellie versus Abby. When it comes to the scars are pretty bad people. You need to get rid of them. But when it comes to, Ellie versus Abby, they're both doing it for, understandable reasons. Like, again, that Ellie's going after Abby because she killed Joel. That's very understandable, but it's understandable why Abby went after Joel, mainly because he killed her father, but also killed the person that probably could have cured the world. And of course, so, again, bring it back to the main story itself. I kind of loved and hated the things that Ellie did. For just kind of explain that, I would just not agree with the things Ellie would do, but I'm like, well, let me go ahead and strap in, because here we go. Ellie just had so many opportunities to go down this path, but instead chose to go down a very, very bad path, which again made the game more interesting. But it's just like, dang, you had the chance to get out of this, but you chose to go down that path. I hate it, but I love it at the same time. Like when she has the choice between going with Jesse just to get Tommy and to get out of there, especially because of the condition that Dina was in, or to go after Abby because she heard over the radio where she possibly was staying out. And of course, she chooses to go after Abby, and that choice was probably one of the worst choices that she made in the game, because by doing that, she kills some other people, or well, those are people that she wanted to kill, but she didn't know that she was pregnant. And then on top of that, she ends up leaving that map. That map leads Abby to where they are, and then ends up getting Jesse killed, and almost gets herself and Dina killed, on top of Tommy almost getting killed. So she gets her ass beat, and I'm like, well, that's some comeuppance for you. You should have just picked up Tommy and left. But that's one of the things I just hate and love about the story. Oh, and I did like the fight with where you're playing as Abby against Ellie. I honestly thought it was kind of cool that it seemed like that Ellie was going to be the final boss of the game, because at that point I'm thinking, okay, this is the final boss here. And when Abby kicks their asses again, and she leaves them, okay, for the second time she's letting them live. So I'm like, okay, this is the end here. Ellie's probably learned a lesson, because the next part is that they're out on the farm. She has a family now with Dina, with the kid. And so I'm thinking they had the farm that they were talking about. So I'm like, okay, this is a great place to leave the game off. Just end it here. It's okay. She didn't get a revenge. Again, the cycle of violence thing, I like it. We can end it here. But then the game decides it wants to keep going. Yeah, I just didn't like the fact that the game kept going after that point, especially because I'm like, all right, the game's wrapping up. It just seemed like a good ending point. And then it's like when a movie goes on for too long. That's what this game kind of felt like. It just went on longer than it should have. It should have ended right there. I don't like the fact they kept going, like that fact that she's going back after Abby again. And, Dina's pleading with her, like, hey, we're happy here. We have a family. I understand that, you're still going through some stuff, but we're trying to do this together. Because, again, I'm pretty sure it's still pretty traumatic for her losing Jesse like that. And just that whole experience was traumatic. And they have each other. But she's still choosing to go after, for revenge rather than staying with the family. And so, she goes back after Abby, and then she just ends up worse for wear once again, which I'm like, okay, yeah, you already got your comeuppance earlier by getting your ass beat by Abby, but then to go back out and just end up worse than you were, it just doesn't sit right with me, because by the end of the game, Ellie has lost her family because they're like, no, we're not staying with you. You chose to go after them. Okay, then even if you come back alive, we're not going to be here when you get back. So her family's gone now. And then, she doesn't even get her revenge on Abby. She still lets her go because, I guess she's at that point, she's just kind of done, or I don't know what she was thinking about at that time. And then on top of that, she can't even play the dang guitar anymore because 2 of her fingers got bitten off. And then on top of that, again, Joel's gone. So she was just broken character at the end of the game. It's just that you feel like that she should have learnt her lesson after she chose to go after Abby rather than going with Jesse a little earlier on in the game, and seeing how that turned out. You would think that she would have learned that she because she even has a family, she's better, she's good, she's good right now, but she still decides to go after Abby and ends up even worse than she left off. I'm like, that's why I wish it would have ended at the farm. Because, again, she would have been a little bit broken, but not as broken as she is because she went after Abby again. So, after letting the ending sit with me a little bit longer, I'm going to have to bring down my review score a bit. In my original spoiler-free review, I gave the game, I believe, a 9 out of 10. But I'm going to have to, after letting that ending sit with me, it's going to have to come down to like an 8 or an 8.5, because I just really don't like the state that they leave Ellie in at the end of the game. But I am still keeping it at a pretty high score because the rest of the game, even if you don't like the story, is pretty freaking amazing. I'm not going to go into too much detail because I went over a lot of the things that I liked about the game in my spoiler-free review, so go watch that. But one of the things I mentioned in my spoiler-free review was how I just could not put the game down. I just wanted to keep going because I was just enjoying myself in this world and its gameplay. Now, some of the things that I didn't mention in my spoiler-free review was some of the different enemy types, like for example the dogs, how they follow you. I thought that was interesting. I always felt kind of smart when I would get away from the dog would be following my scent, and I lay down a trap, and the dog would follow it and it'd go like, oh no, my dog. And I don't know, made me feel smart. Or, I really like the stalkers. I believe they're new to this game, where they don't really make that much noise when So when you're trying to listen for them, you don't really see them when you're in listening mode, and they kind of just sneak up on you. Or normally they yell at you, and you're like, oh, what direction are they coming from? I thought that was fun. Again, some of the boss fights were big, like when you're fighting a really big dude, and he has that a smaller dude kind of detaches from him, so you're fighting them both at the same time. You know, the game's just fun. Even though a lot of people say that the game still feels a little bit too similar to the original game, like they're like, where's the innovation at, you know? But the thing is that I haven't played the original in like 7 years, so I didn't really feel that fatigue or the game feeling too samey to the original one. But again, you guys, overall, I really enjoyed the game. Again, I'm giving it like an 8.5 out of 10. And but I can definitely understand why someone would absolutely hate the story or the direction that it decided to take. I can definitely understand that, because I've heard some good arguments. And on top of that, I've heard of what some people's theories, or not theories, but what they feel like what they should have done. Like, this game probably should have been like the third game, but in a second game, what they should have did was have Ellie or whoever go out on their own, and then then Ellie ends up actually running into Abby, and because of some type of situation that they end up in, and they have to work together. And, you know, they end up kind of bonding and learning about each other and blah, blah, blah. Maybe even getting to see some of Abby's friends along the way. But then when we about to go our separate ways, we know Abby's kind of able to find out that what our connection to Joel is, that we know who Joel is. Maybe we mention him to her, and she's like, oh, that's probably the Joel that I'm after. And so when they go their separate ways, you know, Abby kind of follows her, and then they kind of, you remember how, like, in the game, if you played it, there's a point where Abby ends up kind of like right kind of outside of Jackson, which is the town that Ellie and Joel are staying in, and that's when the game should have ended. And then part 3 would have been, you know, this game, or did something a bit different, you know? That probably would have eased a lot of people into the story that they wanted to tell here in part 3, but what's done is done. So this video is starting to drag on a bit, so let me go ahead and get some rapid fire stuff I wanted to talk about really quick. I think there's only one more thing related to gameplay that I didn't get to mention, and that is how I like how Abby and Ellie's playstyles are just a little bit different, and they're different enough, or how they have, you know, access to different weapons, like how Ellie has a shiv that she doesn't have to worry about breaking when it comes to taking down clickers, but Abby does. Or I also like how Abby has like a pipe bomb and Ellie has a Molotov. You know, I like how they're a bit different in that aspect. So you guys know how I feel about the game, but I want to hear about what you guys think about the game. Please leave your comments down below. And if you liked this video, like the video. And if you like me, subscribe to me. And as always, this is DDG the Man, and I'll catch y'all next time.
Just one second to make a